Hi, today we're tackling a challenging problem, how to manage mom rage. Are you ready? First, let's talk about what it is and how to identify the triggers. And then we'll cover 4 specific steps that you can take to get on top of this for good. So what is this anyway? Mom rage goes beyond typical frustration that every mom feels. It's an intense, overwhelming anger that can sometimes feel very out of control. This usually comes from high stress or unmet need or a lot of expectations with very limited resources. Because you're here, you probably already know what mom rage is, and you're looking for some ways to get on top of it. So let's look at the triggers next. Would you just take a moment to reflect on what happens just before the mom rage sets in? Now, this is a great question to reflect on and just spend a little thinking time on, because usually there are triggers. It's kind of like a chain that has a little bitty link on this end and then a little bigger link connected to that and a little bigger, stronger one connected to that, until at the other end of the chain is this powerful, big, strong, unbreakable link. If you can picture a chain like that, usually the trigger starts at this weak end of the chain and it progresses link by link till it's unbreakable at the end, and it probably feels out of control. Well, often if we can see the blow up, and we can look at what happened just before that. So we're backing up the chain. What happened just before you blew up? Well, my child made a big mess or whatever, okay? Well, what happened just before that? I felt some frustration building up. What happened just before that? And you can back it up often to a link that is breakable, that we can address. Because once it gets too far down the chain, we don't typically stop it. Usually at this other end of the chain, at the weak end of the chain, is feeling tired or stressed or overburdened or not getting enough sleep or missing my exercise or disappointment or fear. These feelings can be addressed, but if we allow it to go down the chain to the rage, it's often harder to break down at that end. You might try keeping a journal. And this is something I ask some of my clients to do, just to track what is it that is leading up to these episodes. Can I back it up and get back to the earlier part of the chain and understand a little bit better what my own triggers are? That might be something that you could do to better understand where you're coming from. Now, let's get to those practical steps. But before we do that, would you just take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell too, so that you will have the resources right here available to you on a regular basis. So 4 steps that you can apply. Number 1, pause and breathe. This is really basic, and breathing doesn't solve anything. What it does is it puts your brain in position to solve anything. Most of the problems that you're blowing up over have relatively simple solutions if you were to think. And your brain isn't thinking in a moment of rage, it's reacting. You can appreciate this, right? So breathing is a way to reverse that process in your brain. And I would recommend that you just pause, take a deep breath in through your nose. In fact, just practice this with me. You ready? In through the nose, feel those lungs stretch and hold, just briefly. And then exhale slowly through the mouth, like you're blowing out birthday candles. Just push it out, and then inhale through the nose again. Hold, and out through the mouth. Do that 3, 4, 5 times in a row, and notice what happens. In fact, notice if you did it with me just now, you might notice a calming effect. This is a physiological hack. It's a trick to get your brain to reverse that process of fight or flight. When you have the rage, it's your brain trying to protect you. from an unseen and really unknown danger. But your brain is reacting in a very primitive fight or flight way. The breathing helps to reverse that. And like I said, breathing doesn't solve any of the problems, but it puts your brain in position to get working on a solution. Thinking instead of fighting. Breathe. Step number 2, walk away. This is the timeout strategy. And we do this with our kids all of the time, right? You need a timeout. Would it be okay to say, you know what, mom needs a timeout? And you even say that to your kids, you know what, mom needs a timeout for just a moment. And you step away from the situation. You break the pattern. In fact, if you can physically change your position, that often helps. If you're standing, sit. If you're inside, go outside. If you're outside, go inside. Change up the environment in a way that allows you to step away from those triggering elements that got you fired up in the first place. A lot of times, just the change in scenery helps to interrupt that pattern enough that you don't get clear down the chain to the rage end. The other thing I really like about this is you are modeling for your children effective ways to handle their own emotions. Because these little people that we're raising are still learning to regulate their own emotions. So you are not only doing something that's effective for you, you're modeling this for your children. Here's another step that's going to take a little bit more work, but I think this is going to be helpful in the long run. Take a piece of paper and draw a line right down the middle of the paper. And on the left side, list the things that you control. And on the right side, the things that your child controls. And just put it side by side. This exercise allows us to focus on what we control. And a little hint here, your child's behavior belongs on one side of that paper and it's not yours. This is what we usually get frustrated about because we want to control something that we don't have any control over. Now, you do control what you provide. You do control your own attitude. There are a lot of things on your side of the page that you can use and focus on. I remember a time when I was doing a little home improvement project and it involved a little bit of plumbing. Well, I'm a psychologist, not a plumber. So I called my dad and he'd done a little bit of plumbing. He said, there's only 2 rules. Number 1, water runs downhill. Okay, I can see why that's helpful. Number 2, don't lick your fingers. And Dad was joking a little bit, but this applies to parenting. Those 2 same rules apply to parenting. Water runs downhill, that means some things you control, other things you don't. It's a natural law, get used to it. Number 2, don't lick your fingers. Meaning, focus on what you control. These are the rules that we're going to apply as we move forward. So start getting clear about what you control and what you don't. And if you need some help with that, talk to your coach. There's a lot of effective coaching available to you. The 4th step, practice self-compassion. Let's go a little easier on mom, shall we? It's okay to feel these intense emotions. You know what? There you go, being human again. This is part of how humans operate. And so rather than beating yourself up or insisting that you be different than you are, have some compassion. Being a mom doesn't mean you need to be perfect all the time. In fact, it means you're going to become familiar very quickly with your imperfections. And that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're human. And there are a lot of moms in exactly the same boat. So let's go easier on mom. Be nice to you. If I treated you the way you treat you, would we be friends? Consider that and have a lot of compassion. Here's what I'm concluding. Just because you're here tells me you are a good mom. You're a benevolent, generous, loving mother. You care for your kids enough to look into ways that you can improve. And my hat goes off to you for that. It's not an easy job. You don't have to do this alone. I've got you. I've been coaching moms and parents now for over 3 decades. And I know the principles that can help you to get on top of mom rage and go beyond that to becoming the mom that you've always promised yourself that you would be. Will you watch this next video? I've got some positive parenting solutions for you. And we'll talk about 5 tips for creating that calm, peaceful mind. Are you ready? Go to that video next. I've got you.